Welcome to the deep dive. If you need a shortcut through, about 2 millennia of intellectual history, you're definitely in the right place today. We're tracing one of humanity's biggest shifts, really a revolution. It's the move away from just relying on ancient authority, on old texts, towards, rigorous observation and math.
Right. And our mission for you listening is really to find those key moments, those nuggets of change that signal this huge leap.
A leap from what, like 15 centuries of stagnation between ancient Greece and Copernicus?
Pretty much, yeah. From that long, quiet period to the incredible, accelerating progress we've seen since the Renaissance. It's a huge jump.
Okay, let's start there then. The stagnation. We need to set the scene. For over 1,000 years, knowledge. It was almost treated like scripture, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Think Aristotle, Ptolemy. Their teachings were basically cemented as absolute truth, unquestionable.
So how did that actually start to crack? Copernicus, right? Heliocentric model.
Yeah, but what's key is how it was initially challenged. It wasn't because Copernicus had better data right away. Actually, his observations weren't much sharper than Ptolemy's very complicated Earth-centered system.
So what was his argument then?
It was mainly aesthetic. He argued his sun-centered system was just much more elegant, simpler, cleaner.
Elegance over data. Sounds more philosophical, not quite science as we know it.
Exactly. It was a useful guide, elegance, but not foolproof. And his elegant system immediately hit a big practical problem, a real observation issue. The parallax dilemma.
Right. The idea that if the Earth's whipping around the sun, nearby stars should seem to shift position against the background stars over the year.
Precisely. And nobody could see that shift. Not with the instruments they had.
So no parallax meant what?
It meant Copernicus had only one way out. The stars had to be incredibly far away, like hundreds of times farther than Saturn, which was the edge of the known universe then.
Hundreds of times. That creates a huge void.
A massive, seemingly empty void. And for the ancient and medieval mindset, that just felt wrong. Inefficient. Why would God design a universe with all that wasted space? That vast, dark gap felt philosophically and theologically, awkward. Unnecessary.
So the first big challenge wasn't purely empirical proof, but this mix of aesthetics and philosophical discomfort. Okay, that makes the real shift towards hands-on investigation even more interesting. Let's pivot from the stars to us, inside the human body. How did this move away from ancient wisdom play out there?
Right, well, this brings us neatly to Andreas Vesalius and the birth of what you could call empirical anatomy.
For him, medicine was very hierarchical.
Extremely. Dissections were actually pretty rare, and when they did happen, they were done by low-status surgeons. Seen as manual laborers, really.
While the educated professors stood back, literally didn't get their hands dirty.
Literally. The professor would sit up high, maybe read from Galen, the ancient authority, while the surgeon did the cutting down below. A real disconnect. Vesalius's approach was radical. He said, no, if I'm teaching anatomy, I need to do the dissection. I need to see it myself.
Trust his own eyes over the ancient text.
That was the revolutionary part. He had the privileged observation.
And when he did get his hands dirty, what did he find? What overturned Galen?
He found that Galen's descriptions were, flawed, often significantly, and he figured out why. Galen hadn't really dissected humans much, if at all. His anatomy was based mostly on animals. Pigs, monkeys, dogs.
Pigs and monkeys, not humans. Okay, that would explain something.
Oh, definitely. Like, Galen described the human liver as having 5 lobes, like some animals do. Vesalius showed, no, humans typically have 2 main lobes. Galen thought blood seeped through invisible pores in the heart's septum. Vesalius showed the septum was solid.
Wow. So Vesalius basically said the body itself is the primary text, not Galen.
Exactly. His detailed, repeatable observations became the authority. And, his work wasn't done in a vacuum. He had support in Padua. There's this amazing, if slightly grim, anecdote.
About the judge?
Yes, Judge Marcantonio Contarini. He didn't just provide bodies of executed criminals for Vesalius's public dissections, which was already significant support. Sometimes Contarini would actually delay executions to fit Vesalius's teaching schedule, ensuring he had fresh specimens when needed.
Delaying executions for an anatomy lesson, that's quite the commitment to empiricism.
It shows how seriously this new way of learning of direct investigation was starting to be taken by civic authorities, not just scholars.
Okay, so back to the heavens. A parallel shift needed to happen there too, right? The idea of perfect, unchanging skies had to break down.
Yeah.
Enter Tycho Brahe.
Yes, Tycho. He's a fascinating figure. Kind of a bridge. An aristocrat, a bit eccentric. You know the story about his nose.
Lost it in a duel over a math formula, supposedly, and wore a metal one.
That's the legend. He was definitely colorful, studied astronomy against his family's wishes, but his real contribution was meticulous, sustained observation, unprecedented accuracy for the time. And his big moment came in 1572.
The supernova in Cassiopeia.
Exactly. He saw a new star, a stellar nova. Suddenly, undeniably, there was something new in the supposedly eternal, unchanging heavens.
Right. That directly contradicts Aristotle's perfect celestial spheres.
Instantly. That single observation proved the heavens could change. They weren't immutable. They could suffer, well, corruption just like the Earth. It cracked at the foundation of the old cosmology.
Did people immediately accept it, though? One star overturning centuries of belief.
Not overnight, no. Beliefs that ingrained take time to shift, but Tycho's data was so good, so precise, people couldn't just ignore it. It forced the issue, opened the door for more questions. And stepping through that door, telescope in hand, was Galileo.
Galileo. Okay, so he really cements the empirical method in astronomy.
He does. He used the telescope, this new technology, to gather observations that were just clear, direct evidence supporting Copernicus. Think about his discovery of Jupiter's moons.
The 4 big ones, yeah. How did that help Copernicus?
Well, it showed that a planet could move through space and keep its moons orbiting around it. One of the big arguments against Copernicus was, if the Earth is moving, how does it drag the moon along?
Ah, so Jupiter proved you could have moons orbiting a moving planet.
Exactly. It showed multiple centers of motion were possible. It demolished that specific objection.
And then there's Venus, his observation of its phases. That's like the textbook example of the scientific method, right?
And it really is perfect. He'd heard the prediction. If Copernicus is right, if Venus orbits the sun inside Earth's orbit, then it must show phases, just like our moon does. Crescents, full Venus, gibbous phases.
Depending on where it is relative to us and the sun.
Precisely. So, hypothesis, Venus has phases. Prediction, we should be able to see them with a telescope. Galileo looked.
He saw them.
He saw them. Prediction confirmed. Hypothesis supported. That cycle hypothesis, prediction, observation, confirmation, that's the core engine of science we still rely on.
Okay, so we've got Copernicus challenging authority aesthetically, Vesalius doing it with hands-on dissection, Tycho showing the heavens aren't perfect, Galileo providing telescopic proof. This is a massive shift.
Yeah.
By the mid-1600s, the sheer amount of data must have been overwhelming. Science needed structure, new language.
It absolutely did. All this new empirical information needed a framework, and that's where Isaac Newton comes in. The field had kind of grown up, and it needed mathematical rigor.
The Principia Mathematica.
Yes, its impact was just monumental, not just for describing motion, but for unifying things.
Unifying what, exactly?
He showed that the same force, gravity, described by the same simple mathematical laws, governed both an apple falling from a tree and the moon orbiting the Earth.
So earthly physics and heavenly physics were the same.
One and the same. A single, rational, knowable system. It was this incredible maturation showing the universe operated on predictable laws, on facts, not, as he put it, dreams.
Amazing that this came from someone who apparently wasn't great at practical stuff early on.
Oh, completely. You hear these stories, sent home from Cambridge to run the family farm during the plague, and he was apparently a terrible farmer, just sat under trees, reading, thinking about math and physics. His sheep kept wandering into the neighbors' fields.
Lucky for us, he preferred thinking to farming.
Very lucky. And around the same time, you see another crucial development, the role of resources, of wealth, in driving science forward. Robert Boyle is a prime example.
How so? How did his wealth change things?
Boyle was incredibly wealthy. This meant he could essentially run his own private research institute in Oxford. He could hire assistants, brilliant ones like Robert Hooke. He could afford expensive equipment like state-of-the-art air pumps. And, crucially, he could pay the printers on time.
Rapid publication. Getting the results out there.
Yes. That speeds everything up. His work on gases, pressure, the nature of the vacuum. It was groundbreaking, and because he had the resources, it got published quickly, others could read it, repeat it, build on it. It wasn't just a lone genius anymore.
So Boyle represents science becoming more organized, funded, almost industrialized, capable of bigger, more expensive experiments.
That's a good way to put it. Building reliable air pumps back then was a serious engineering challenge, very costly. Boyle's experiments showing a vacuum could exist, showing how air pressure worked, that needed resources. It marks a shift towards science needing infrastructure.
Okay, and finally, all this mathematical and empirical rigor allows science to tackle one of the oldest ideas of all, the four elements: earth, air, fire, water.
Right, that ancient Greek idea was incredibly persistent. It took chemists like Lavoisier and especially John Dalton later in the early 19th century to really put it to rest. And they did it with quantification, measurement.
How did measurement kill the four elements?
Dalton hammered home the idea of the atom, but critically, he defined elements by their unique weight. Each element he proposed consists of identical, indivisible atoms, and what makes carbon atoms different from oxygen atoms is their distinct, measurable weight.
So it forced chemistry to stop classifying things by qualities, is it wet, dry, hot, cold, and start classifying by a hard number, weight.
That's the key insight. Weight became the objective measure. Suddenly you could precisely track how substances combined and changed. The idea that everything was just combinations of four fuzzy elements just couldn't hold up against precise quantitative atomic weights. It retired that ancient philosophy for good.
So this incredible journey from questioning Aristotle to defining the atom by weight, what does all this mean for us now, for the learner trying to make sense of the modern scientific world?
Well, the path we've traced, it's led us to understand a universe of mind-boggling scales. From, Hubble showing us billions of galaxies way beyond anything Copernicus imagined, down to the intricate structure of DNA, the electron, things Vesalius couldn't dream of.
And our understanding, even of ourselves, our own species, is tied up in this history. You mentioned Carl Linnaeus earlier, the classification guy.
Right. Linnaeus gave us the Homo sapiens classification, binomial nomenclature. But he very deliberately put humans in their own genus, Homo, completely separate.
Just us, Homo sapiens, sole member.
The sole member, even though sources suggest, based purely on the anatomy known in his time, he privately thought humans belonged in the same genus as chimpanzees and gorillas, the great apes.
But he didn't classify us that way. Why the separation?
He was apparently worried about the backlash, the wrath of theologians, as one source puts it, suggesting humans were just another ape in the same genus. That was too controversial for the mid-18th century. So Homo sapiens, alone in its genus, was kind of a diplomatic compromise.
Wow. Which means if we classified ourselves today strictly based on, say, DNA evidence,
we'd almost certainly fall under the genus Pan, alongside chimps and bonobos. Genetically, we're that close.
So the fact that we're still Homo sapiens in our own special genus, that's not purely science.
It's largely a historical accident, a legacy of Linnaeus's quite understandable fear of societal and religious upset back then. And that's the final thought we want to leave you with.
How much of the scientific structure we accept today, even something as fundamental as our species name, might be shaped not just by pure data, but by historical context, by past controversies, by human decisions made centuries ago?
Exactly. It makes you think about how knowledge gets built and maintained.
Definitely something to mull over. So our next deep dive,